Council Committee on Technology in Government, and we're here today to talk about a particular resolution, which we will go through in the PowerPoint presentation. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. This is a committee that has existed for the last 7 years. We have a commitment to making sure that there is as much access as possible to whatever broadband exists. We've worked in schools and senior centers, and we thought about spectrum. I think there's almost no topic we haven't discussed. So I really appreciate everyone being here today and the tremendous interest. So why don't we get started, and then we'll hear from those who are going to testify. So this is on intro, that resolution, that number 1613, that talks about the regulation and use of the unallocated portion of the radio spectrum, also known as white spaces. I think if you're not as involved as people here today, you wouldn't know what in the world we're talking about. But it has to do with the fact that when we go from rabbit ears, as some of us call it, to using more sophisticated digital on our television sets, there will be these white spaces, which are unutilized radio wave frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum between licensed TV channels that are used to keep one channel from bleeding into its neighbor. The Federal Communications Commission, also known as the FCC, has permitted the licensed use of white spaces for low-power, short-range broadcast to groups including broadcast networks and motion picture and television program producers. White spaces are currently utilized by numerous consumers, including sporting events, film and television productions, music productions, live theater, certainly something that's very much a part of New York City, and houses of worship through the use of wireless microphones. The FCC issued a notice of proposed rulemaking, NPRM, in May 2004 to allow wireless devices to use white spaces on an unlicensed basis. In October 2006, the FCC adopted a first report and order and further NPRM approving the use of fixed low-power devices to operate on any channel that is not already being used by other authorized services. The FCC also ruled that they will further study whether or not permitting low-power personal portable devices, again something that people can't really even conceive of right now, to operate in the open spectrum will cause interference to other users. But again, this is all coming in the future and exciting. In response to the 2006 ruling, the FCC laboratory conducted a study to measure whether white space devices, known as WSDs, used spectrum sensing technology to detect the signals of other stations and its ability to interfere with TV reception, something that's on everyone's mind, and wireless microphone operations. Then on January 31st, 2007, the FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology released a report that concluded that such devices could not reliably detect the presence of incumbent transmissions and is capable of causing interference to TV broadcasting and wireless microphones. The wireless microphones are used on Broadway. In January 2008, the FCC announced that it would begin a second phase of performance testing on these WSDs, which includes laboratory and field tests, test is spelled wrong, that are conducted openly for the public to view. 2 field tests were conducted in August 2008, one at the FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, and at the Majestic Theater in New York City. The FCC has not released these findings. Proponents of allowing portable wireless devices to access the internet using unlicensed white spaces, but believe that the use of the unused spectrum will provide consumers with inexpensive, high-speed internet access. Signals can travel long distances and penetrate buildings. Proponents state that the availability of white spaces for portable devices will enhance local coverage and communications, spur new communication technologies, and improve public safety and e-government services, something that we've obviously talked about at this committee. Proponents also believe that the WSDs, the devices that include interference reducing features, are capable of detecting occupied frequency and avoiding interference to other channels. Opponents believe that the proposed wireless devices may impact wireless microphones and other technologies that have historically relied on these frequencies. Wireless microphone operators and broadcast companies are worried that a proliferation of these devices operated by regular folks without any ability to coordinate their use will interfere with wireless microphones in local areas and clear television viewing. Many organizations feel that the FCC should not allow portable devices to use this area of the spectrum until the devices are proven to always detect other signals and avoid those frequencies. So you can see that there is a lot of discussion. I think the bottom line is that we all want everything. And hopefully, with some discussion here and in Washington, we will be successful. So I'd like to first call the first panel, which is Lori Baskin from the Performing Arts Alliance and Theater Communities, Charlotte St. Martin from Broadway League, Martino, Ira Mond, who is from Actors Equity. You should all come up to the table here. And Mary Landerto, who's from Local 802, which is the Musicians Union. I'd like to thank Jeffrey Baker, who's counsel to the committee on my left, and Colleen Patchter, who is the policy analyst, and Samuel Wong from my office. Also, I think Lionel Francois is also here from the Finance Division. Welcome. We called 4 people. There's only 3 of you. Is that? Well, why don't we start with the 3 of you? Whoever would like to begin, introduce yourself, and please give your remarks.
Thank you. Good morning. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Chair, Councilwoman Brewer, and all the members of the Committee on Technology and Government for the opportunity to present testimony at this hearing. My name is Mary Landolfi, and I am the President of the American Federation of Musicians Local 802. I am here to address the serious issue of the FCC's testing of mobile Internet devices designed to operate in what is known as white spaces, the frequencies between television channels. We at Local 802 and our parent organization, the American Federation of Musicians, believe this to be a very risky proposal that will have devastating effects on live concerts, Broadway productions, symphonic performances, and any event where wireless microphones are used. These Internet devices will operate on frequencies close to or even on top of those used by wireless microphones. This will create a very high chance of interference, thereby ruining the audience's experience. The economic effect of any reduction of audience enjoyment of live performance is potentially devastating. Broadway alone contributed over $5 billion to New York City's economy during the 2006-2007 season. The sound engineers on each production work with broadcasters and others who use the white spaces for wireless microphones to ensure that all users operate on separate frequencies. The success of these vital steps requires, among other things, sufficient space between the frequencies in order to guarantee no interference. Permitting the use of white space devices before it is irrefutably proven that they can reliably detect when frequencies are occupied and that they will not interfere with incumbent wireless microphones puts Broadway's economic contribution to the New York economy at risk. Thus far, the Internet white space devices tested by the FCC have failed to reliably detect when white space frequencies are in use. Without reliable detection, these new devices will interfere with other incumbent microphones or broadcasters, allowing untested mobile Internet devices to operate on television white space frequencies, which will be used by non-professionals, i.e. consumers, who cannot be expected to coordinate frequencies with other users, will almost guarantee interference with other incumbent wireless microphone users and broadcasters. In some markets, the white spaces often do not even exist. In New York City, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Nashville, and other cities with large entertainment and cultural markets, the so-called white spaces are being used by wireless microphones. In other words, there is no space for these new devices to operate. Beaconing technology, which white space device proponents claim is a suitable solution to the interference problem, has yet to be tested and has never been made public by the manufacturers. We have no idea if this technology is possible or if it will work correctly. Furthermore, a great deal of professional concert halls and theaters are nonprofit organizations that may not be able to afford the beaconing technology, even if it does help with the interference problem. It should not be incumbent upon them to purchase this new technology when the FCC, for the last 35 years, has allowed professional theaters to operate on the television white spaces without a problem. For the record, the American Federation of Musicians is not opposed to new mobile internet devices operating in the white spaces. We understand the benefit they might offer to the public. However, just as a responsible automobile manufacturer doesn't release a new car into the market until it has been rigorously tested in both lab and real-world settings, we call on the FCC to prohibit the production, sale, or use of these devices until it has done the same. The FCC must establish beyond all doubt in the lab and in the real world that these products will in no way jeopardize New York's audience experiences or pose any risk to our economy by interfering with incumbent wireless microphone use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chairwoman Brewer and members of the Technology and Government Committee. Thank you for holding this hearing on the regulation and use of unallocated portion of the radio spectrum known as white spaces. My name is Ira Mont, and I'm the third Vice President of Actors Equity Association, which represents more than 47,000 professional stage actors and stage managers nationwide. I am currently the production stage manager of my 6th Broadway musical, the new Mel Brooks musical Young Frankenstein, which gives me first-hand experience on the use of the wireless microphones, headset communications, and scenic elements that operate on these white spaces. For the last several decades, the theatrical community has relied on the use of wireless headsets, allowing communication backstage that are indispensable to the integrity of the show, but more importantly to the safety of the actors and dozens of industry professionals who work backstage. In addition, wireless microphones are used by the actors so that the sound heard by the audience is clear, distinct, and well balanced. Because of the limited space and the highly technical aspect of each production, the choreography backstage is often more intricate than what is on stage. During each performance of Young Frankenstein, I and my stage management team call several hundred cues. These cues are for lighting, elevators, scenery that can often weigh several tons that flies in or moves on or off stage. Trapdoors opening and closing, smoke, fog, and pyrotechnics, just to name a few. These cues also alert the actors to their entrances, whether it is to walk onto the stage or fly in on apparatus from above the stage. The wireless microphone and communication systems are a highly complex process, and they require frequent recalibration to the show system before each performance in order to avoid interference with the many other uses of the white space spectrum, including our neighboring shows. Without these systems, theatrical venues, from the 30-some-odd Broadway theaters and dozens of others here in New York to the over 1,000 theaters across the country, small developing theaters, large regional theaters and arenas, they simply will not be able to operate, and the results will likely be damaging for both the venues and the communities in which they are located. These theaters, like Broadway, are often important economic engines for these cities and towns, and just like Broadway, these theaters help to support dozens of ancillary businesses, returning hard-earned dollars into the communities. Technological advances have allowed theatrical productions to become more inventive, incorporating elements of spectacle and wonder into the performances. However, these lavish Broadway musicals, which audiences across the nation have come to expect and enjoy, could be changed forever if the FCC allows white spaces to be used for devices that deliver high-speed broadband internet to personal portable devices. The FCC testing has consistently shown these devices do not accurately detect occupied channels and could interfere with the wireless systems used in theatrical ventures. Actors Equity Association applauds the New York City Council's Committee on Technology and Government for its proposed resolution, in which the Council urges the FCC to refrain from implementing the proposed regulatory amendments without ensuring such amendments will not have a negative impact on all incumbent wireless users. Without safeguards that prove that the portable devices will not interfere with the white space usage and strongly worded protective amendments, the proposed regulatory amendments could devastate live theater as we know it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Good morning. Dear Council Member Brewer and members of the City Council, thank you for holding this hearing on the white spaces, for providing leadership in trying to protect the performing arts here in New York City, and for allowing me to appear before you to provide public testimony. I am Lori Baskin, Director of Government and Education Programs at Theater Communications Group. TCG is a founding member of the Performing Arts Alliance, formerly called the American Arts Alliance. The Performing Arts Alliance members include the Association of Performing Arts Presenters, Dance USA, the League of American Orchestras, Opera America, Theater Communications Group, Chorus America, and the National Alliance for Musical Theater. I am here to testify on behalf of the entire Performing Arts Alliance and all of our members. I am here to stress the importance of maintaining interference-free and affordable use of wireless microphone and related audio equipment currently being used by communities, performers, and audiences. The Performing Arts Alliance is a national network of more than 4,000 members, comprising the professional, nonprofit, performing arts, and presenting fields. For 30 years, the Performing Arts Alliance has been the premier advocate for America's professional, nonprofit arts organizations, artists, and their publics before the U.S. Congress and key policymakers. Through legislative and grassroots action, the Performing Arts Alliance advocates for national policies that recognize, enhance, and foster the contributions made by the performing arts to America. Professional wireless sound equipment is used to provide high-quality audio to our audiences and to record and present these artistic performances to people all over the world through broadcast on television, cable, satellite, and the internet. Wireless microphones and related wireless audio equipment are used extensively and play a critical role in the production of dance, music, opera, orchestra, and theater performances. Audiences would not hear the performers without wireless microphones, and the recording of such productions provide an infinite opportunity to expand the audience and availability of these performances to individuals who are unable to attend live performances. Many performances require as many as 45 frequencies for each production. Wireless microphones and equipment are utilized to facilitate communication between backstage staff members and performers. Directors, managers, crew members, and many others rely upon such equipment to communicate performance and lighting cues, staging movement, and other vital directions. The use of wired audio equipment would not only be impractical, but would create an unsafe and dangerous work area for performers and staff. Wireless microphones and audio equipment provide the freedom to move safely and quickly through the stage environment while providing high-quality and reliable audio transmissions. There is no practical or feasible alternative to the wireless audio systems currently used by performing arts organizations. Without them, the performing arts would be silent. We applaud the City Council's resolution urging the FCC to refrain from implementing proposed regulatory amendments that would allow portable devices to operate on the white space radio spectrum without ensuring that such amendments would not negatively impact the performing arts and all incumbent wireless microphone users. We have asked the Commission to craft rules which would require that new portable devices intended to operate in this spectrum not be permitted until they are tested and verified that they will not disrupt wireless equipment. We have further requested that the Commission designate certain clean spectrum that can be used by our audio systems without the threat of interference from the new devices and to adopt appropriate protections. Without the high quality and interference-free operation of wireless microphones, the audio quality of performing arts performances and recordings would be greatly diminished, impairing thousands of productions and reducing the availability and opportunity for millions of Americans to enjoy these art forms. The performing arts sector is hopeful that whatever the technical solution, that it prevents interference and also acknowledges the sector's legitimate and continuing use within the spectrum. Performing arts organizations have used wireless technology in our performance spaces for at least 30 years. We have never fit into any of the licensed categories, and so we currently operate unlicensed. Yet the technology has long existed that allows our members to present high-quality performances that millions of audience members across the country have come to expect and certainly deserve. It seems that the FCC simply hasn't caught up with the performing arts in terms of acknowledging optimal conditions for arts organizations to serve the public. Over the past year, there have been 2 informal white space demonstrations held in New York City and organized by the Broadway League. Each demonstration was attended by an FCC commissioner who witnessed the kind of interference that could happen if new devices and the policies regulating those devices do not contain adequate safeguards. Further, the FCC held its final white space official field test at the Majestic Theater here in New York. We believe that, because they have visited performing arts venues in New York and have held a final field test here, that the FCC commissioners recognize the importance of the performing arts to New York and the country, and they are interested in a solution that serves all parties. In addition, the nonprofit performing arts sector cannot shoulder the financial burden of a transition alone. Our members operate under tight financial constraints, and the purchase or upgrade of new equipment all at once would be impossible even for our larger members. The Performing Arts Alliance respectfully asks the City Council to communicate to the FCC the importance of ensuring that any changes in the use of the broadcast spectrum will not disrupt dance, music, opera, orchestra, and theater performances enjoyed by millions of Americans. Absent tested and proven interference protection measures, especially the operation of personal portable devices within a performance space, could wreak havoc with the wireless microphone systems and audio equipment. Not only would this disrupt the audience's enjoyment of the performance and impair the recording and broadcast of the performance, but it would also hinder the ability of stage crews to communicate effectively and the artists perform safely. The FCC should continue its careful testing and craft policies that will ensure that change in the use of the broadcast spectrum will not interfere with the wireless microphone and audio equipment that is essential to bringing live performances to millions. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I think we all can say that we want to make sure that whatever is decided, we want to make sure that Broadway is first and foremost on any, and the theater in general, on anybody's list. So I appreciate your expertise that you have gained so quickly on this topic, and that you are here today to share it. We really appreciate that. I think that Herd Mathias from the Schubert Organization wanted to also come up from the Broadway League. I know you just got here. Why don't we ask questions and then you could bring your statement. Come on up. Yeah, come up and join us. But let me ask you just a couple of questions while she's coming up. One of them is this issue of the microphones, and you don't want to, I want you to be wireless. How does the microphone purchase work now? Because I don't like the word when they say that you're unlicensed. It sounds like it's illegal, because you've actually been doing this for 30 years and you have amazing expertise and you coordinate and you, so I have 3 questions as part of that. One is, would you like to be licensed as part of this discussion? Does the way in which this is working, where hopefully there will be absolutely room for Broadway and any other production to succeed, and how do you think that might work out if the FCC is doing it correctly? What would you like to see in terms of the optimum with the FCC? Those are my 2 questions.
Honestly, I don't even know the answer to that, because I'm not sure what the cost implications would be. We would like to be legitimate, and we would like to have further conversation about the best way to achieve that.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that conversation?
I think that pretty much covers it. It's been so status quo for so many decades, the way the sound shops set up the systems. The cost would clearly be a factor that everyone would have to consider, but also the likely bureaucracy of changing the licensing, because of course frequencies are used by a show or an event of some kind, and then that show is done and closes, and so then those frequencies are released by that show, and they're not using it, and the next show coming in, the constant turnaround by all of the different users would, even beyond cost, which is clearly preeminent in everybody's mind, just the ability to get the licensing that might be required in a timely fashion, it's pretty unlikely that it would happen the way that performing arts ventures have to happen.
And how did the Majestic Theater demo go? Did it seem to go well? Was there information that was shared? Do you want to go ahead and start to testify?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will go ahead and give the testimony and then
Sure.
answer your question. Good morning. I'm Heidi Mathis, the Corporate Relations Manager for the Schubert Organization, here on behalf of the Broadway League, the National Trade Association of the Commercial Broadway Industry, with over 600 members throughout North America. As you undoubtedly know, issues the FCC is deciding today will directly affect the future of Broadway and all live theater. So we thank Councilmember Brewer and the other distinguished members of this committee for the opportunity to share our thoughts and concerns with you. There is no other assembly of theaters in the world as well respected for the quality of its productions as the Broadway community. Each year we host millions of tourists coming to New York from all over the world to experience Broadway and see the lights of Times Square, which translates into millions spent on hotels, taxis, gifts, restaurants, and all other types of secondary spending. Broadway is essential to our economy. We are responsible for infusing New York City with over $5 billion a year and creating the equivalent of nearly 45,000 jobs in the metropolitan area. As you may recall, the city's comptroller estimated a $38 million loss in local tax revenue during last year's 19-day stagehand strike, while other published reports suggested that overall spending in the city was down $17 million per day during that period. Touring Broadway visits nearly 250 North American cities, bringing the opportunity to experience the live shows only Broadway can deliver to countless theater fans who may never get the chance to visit New York. Our most recent studies estimate that, including ancillary spending, touring performances contribute to over $3 billion of spending nationwide each year. Approximately 12% of that money returns to New York, but the bulk of the spending supports the economies of the cities presenting touring Broadway. No industry, more so than live theater, utilizes and relies on wireless microphone technology in its daily operations. We have devoted the past 3 decades to building on the dynamic staging and vibrant performances afforded by the freedom of wireless microphones. Everyone is aware that actors wear wireless devices to run, dance, and sing without the need for cumbersome microphone wire. But few realize that wireless systems are integral behind the scenes. Musicians, technicians, stagehands, stage managers, in fact, nearly every show participant uses a wireless device, and all of motorized stage equipment is operated wirelessly. Each night, productions like The Lion King, Wicked, Spamalot, and Jersey Boys use up to 70 unique wireless channels to bring to life the performances that audiences expect and deserve. Managing Broadway's wireless operations is enormously complicated, and our wireless systems may be gravely threatened by the introduction of proposed handheld devices which would transmit on the bandwidth we occupy, but at a much higher power. With direct line of sight, a typical wireless signal on Broadway will carry only 125 to 150 feet. Add obstructions like performers, patrons, set pieces, and walls, many reinforced with steel to contain wireless waves, and a wireless signal may not carry more than 80 feet. In addition, our sound engineers constantly coordinate with other productions and scan the area for available bandwidth to reduce possible interference from local broadcasters. These new devices could effectively overpower our signals and cause our transmitters to cut out mid-performance. Because we operate at extremely low power, unlike TV broadcasters, our productions do not fall within the FCC's category of licensed users. However, all of our wireless equipment is certified by the FCC as having been manufactured in accordance with federal broadcast guidelines, and we do not operate on frequencies the FCC has cleared for public safety. Prior to a show's opening, our highly skilled technicians spend weeks coordinating frequencies with other theaters and local television broadcasters to ensure interference is never an issue. In all the years Broadway and Touring Broadway have been operating, the FCC does not have a record of a single complaint filed by television or radio station about interference from a Broadway show. In essence, if you will, Broadway is 7-Up. We have never interfered with emergency transmissions, and we never will. In an effort to safeguard white space users from interference from new devices, the FCC asked manufacturers to submit proposed spectrum sensing devices for review, devices designed to refrain from transmitting when in close proximity to another wireless source. The FCC scheduled tests all over the country and under a variety of circumstances. For the final test, FCC engineers spent 2 days at Broadway's Majestic Theater, where Phantom plays, taking readings in and around the theater before and during a performance of Phantom. Despite some published hyperbole to the contrary, neither of the 2 tested devices adequately detected operating microphones at any testing phase. One device, presented by a Singapore-based firm called I2R, consistently missed active wireless channels, while a device offered by Philips showed false positive time and time again. An industry like Broadway, which relies on clear, reliable wireless transmissions, cannot support introduction of new white space devices within these results. In real-world terms, a new device activated on 6th Avenue may not detect a signal emanating from a nearby Broadway theater and decide it's safe to transmit. But once activated, the new device's signal will interfere with that Broadway theater's wireless system and affect the show's sound quality. We've heard new device proponents use terms such as enhanced spectrum sensing, beaconing, and a belts and suspenders approach, which simply piles unproven technology on top of unproven technology to hide significant technical flaws in the devices and inherent limitations of the white space frequencies. One channel simply cannot be occupied by 2 transmitters, and available white space is already limited. Unfortunately, no high-tech terminology can skirt these constraints. Then we must consider the question of who would bear the burdens of purchasing any new equipment current users may be asked to obtain to help support the introduction of new devices. Again, we thank you for this opportunity. The Broadway League is happy to work with the City Council, the FCC, and the members of the White Space Coalition towards developing a reasonable, workable solution to this complex problem. However, we do not believe new devices should be considered for the marketplace unless and until technology permits national use of the white space without interference to current users. Therefore, we support Resolution 1613, and we ask the committee to vote yes.
Thank you very much. You certainly answered the question, so thank you. We've been joined by Councilmember Oliver Coppell from the Bronx. Oliver, we're in the first panel talking about Broadway and the issues regarding the white space. I think what you talked about was how there is great coordination before every production, and I'm just wondering, does that go on in every instance? And is that also true of some of the off-Broadway shows as well as the Broadway shows? In other words, is it across the board?
I think it more applies to Broadway, where they are so densely, one theater right on top of the other. I think it's less of an issue for off-Broadway to coordinate quite that closely, but I think that they do to the extent they need to.
That's accurate. And the sound shops that develop these systems before they're even delivered to the theaters are also speaking with one another. They know the frequencies. There are several shops that provide this equipment and support the sound design teams, and they all work with each other, knowing I'm going into this theater, I've got this for this length of time. The point about touring also is very key, because the systems are put together in the sound shops and they know the bandwidth they're going to be in, but then they arrive in the venue in a city they haven't been to for many months or ever with this particular show, and they have a lot of testing to do to make sure those frequencies are all clean. They might have to make some adjustments. It would be very difficult if they arrived and found that they were essentially locked out of a portion of the bandwidth that was necessary. It would make it very, very complicated.
Also, touring Broadway has the additional consideration that Broadway has, which is usually touring Broadway houses, in addition to Broadway houses, are in the Central City District, which is frequently near other broadcasters. Certainly in the case of Broadway, you have ABC, NBC, CBS, MTV is right across Schubert Alley from us. And that concentration of white space usage is one of the other reasons why Broadway has to balance more, because of where we are geographically located versus off-Broadway. They are not surrounded by as many broadcasters.
And I think I heard you begin to ask earlier, how do performing arts organizations pay for this equipment? In the nonprofit world, it's not all at once. It's something where you budget a little bit every year, and, you know, with time and hopefully good budgets and fundraising is going well and so forth, you buy one piece of equipment a year and you slowly build to the capacity that you need to fully present your performances. If change requires changeover of all of the equipment, you know, at a certain date in time, we're sunk.
And how long does it take, for instance, you know, to put all that equipment together for a particular company? In other words, is it something that you can, you have also a licensed person who's working with you? Obviously, Local 1 is working on Broadway. How long does it take to get a Broadway show, for instance, calibrated? And then with some of the smaller shows, how do they coordinate with some of these other discussions that are going on?
On Broadway, when a Broadway show is opening, especially a musical, which is certainly larger than a play in terms of its sound needs, the sound shop will start putting the package together anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks prior to the equipment being required to be in the theater, which is at least 2 to 4 weeks prior to the performers arriving at the theater to begin their 2 weeks of technical rehearsals before the audience arrives. So the beginning of the process is really a minimum of 3 months prior to a first public performance where the audience is going to experience the performance. So it's a long and complicated process. And clearly, although there's a lot of legwork done, once the equipment actually arrives in the theater, very often adjustments need to be made from what was preset at the sound shop because of what you find when you arrive in the building.
Do you need to make adjustments daily, or is that something that once it's made, it sticks for the show?
Adjustments are often made daily, especially on I don't understand the specific technology. The communications amongst the stage crew and the stage managers seem to remain rather stable to some degree, although we refer to it as being stepped on. You're listening and calling cues, and all of a sudden you hear someone you don't know who it is talking in your headset, and that's an accidental crossover, and it could be from another theater during their load-in process. It could be occasionally from a cab driver driving by. The wireless microphones that the actors use are tested. Each individual frequency is tested before every performance, and occasionally does need adjustment.
Did you want to add something? Okay. I had some experience because LaGuardia High School is in my district, and for their main show, somehow the microphones got lost. And we ended up calling every shop in New York. We got 46 of them on stage. I never had such an experience in my life. So I know what you're going through. Oh, my goodness. The principal and I sat in the back, and we prayed the entire time. My other question is this, this cost issue. Obviously, the best of all would be what you said in terms of your ending statement, where we want to have devices that are able to be used effectively. We want the television to be able to not be interfered with, and we want Broadway and every other show not to be interfered with. That's our goal. And so the question is, in that scenario, it still would make sense if that scenario holds. Again, more testing, you know, gathering all of your evidence, it would make sense then for you not to be licensed into the future, because that would end up costing more. Is that sort of what you're saying? I'm just curious about that aspect of it. Or it doesn't really matter as long as the cost is low and you have no interference?
Well, it is a matter of cost. That is paramount. However, you have to consider the administration of it and who really is the end user. The frequencies change with each show that comes in and out of a theater. It changes with each producer. If you have an understudy go on, is that the end user? Is the performer the end user? It would be very, very difficult to administrate, and you also have to consider the public good that we have established and developed over the years, and to eliminate that over a licensing issue would be a misguided choice.
Okay. And then I know you talked about it, but have you ever received, I think you said not, any complaints for interfering with broadcast television reception or with any wireless microphone? I don't think that's ever happened. And when you tour in other places, I think somebody talked about the fact that Las Vegas is not allowing any devices now. But when you tour in other places, is there interference in other locations, or you've never had a problem?
There hasn't been a problem that I know of, and you also have to consider Vegas has a concentration of theaters. It's a little more spread out than
Yes.
Broadway, but
Much
they
more.
also have perhaps more danger involved in that there's more circus-like spectacle, there's fire and flying in a lot of their shows, and all of that is guided by wireless mics. So, you know, it's extremely dangerous.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Council member, any questions? Thank you all very much. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate making the time and the effort.